The wind coming off the Atlantic had that sticky warmth only a southern beach town could offer. Emily Carson stood at the edge of the weathered wooden deck, her hand gripping the cold metal of the only key to the house. Behind her, laughter spilled out of the open living room windows, echoes of a party she was barely part of. From the sand below, the crashing waves whispered something different, something quieter, something she could almost understand. It was the first night of their long-awaited summer vacation. The house was a dream, 2 stories of whitewashed wood, wrap-around porches, floor-to-ceiling windows, and not another building in sight. The group had talked about this trip for months, 8 days on the Outer Banks, away from college, from stress, from everything. Supposedly together, only now it didn't feel like together. She heard Mads's voice, sharp, bright, leading the conversation as usual. Madison King had always been the ringleader. She was bold, loud, magnetic, and when you were close to her, you could feel like the center of the universe. Until you weren't. Until she found someone shinier. Emily's fingers curled tighter around the key. She hadn't expected to be standing out here alone tonight. A month ago, she and Tyler had still been together. They'd picked this beach house out together, talked about which room they'd share. She'd imagined ocean sunrises with his arms wrapped around her, shared late-night walks in the dunes, stupid sandcastle competitions. But the breakup came fast. No fight, just a shift. One week he was in love with her, the next he wasn't. And now here they all were, still together, still a group, just minus her. Or maybe she was technically present, but emotionally invisible. "Em?" a voice called from the open door. It was Zoe, barefoot and holding a half-filled margarita glass. Her sun-streaked hair clung to her shoulders, still wet from the beach. "Are you coming back in or what?" Emily forced a smile. "In a minute." Zoe shrugged and turned away, not bothering to close the door behind her. The music grew louder, another burst of laughter. Inside, Mads had claimed the biggest bedroom for herself and Noah, her boyfriend. Tyler and Griffin were bunking together. Zoe was supposed to share with Emily, but had already dragged her stuff into the third room without asking. Emily had ended up with the tiny converted office near the back. No closet, no view, just a futon and a rickety dresser. She told herself it was fine. She wasn't here for the room, except maybe she didn't know why she was here at all. She walked slowly down the steps, letting the key drop into her pocket. The sand was cool between her toes, a small relief from the heat of the deck. Out here, it was peaceful. Stars blinked through the haze of salt air. The ocean stretched out forever, silver and endless. She breathed in long and slow and tried to remember the last time she felt like she belonged somewhere. Maybe never. When Tyler had first started dating her, Mads had been polite, supportive even, but there'd always been this edge, this coldness just under the surface. And the more serious Emily and Tyler got, the less welcome she'd felt in the group. Little things. Jokes that stopped when she entered the room. Plans made in front of her that never included her. And now that Tyler had pulled away, there was nothing to shield her. She was alone. And still she'd come. Maybe to prove something. Maybe out of pride, or fear, or just because she couldn't stand the idea of being left behind. The sound of a beer bottle breaking drew her attention back to the house. Griffin shouted something stupid. Everyone laughed. She could hear Tyler's voice now, low and amused. He hadn't said much to her since they arrived. Just polite, awkward phrases. No eye contact, no explanation, nothing. She wanted to hate him, but she couldn't quite get there. Not yet. She turned away from the noise and stared out at the waves again. Somewhere out there was the horizon, a place she couldn't see but knew existed. She wondered what would happen if she just kept walking. Into the dark, into the water, away from all of it. But she stayed still. There was a strength in that too. And if you're drawn to stories of quiet strength, of transformations that begin in silence, make sure to subscribe to the channel now. You won't want to miss where this journey goes next. The next morning started with the sound of laughter and blender noise echoing through the house. Emily woke up to the smell of tropical smoothies and bacon, smells that should have felt welcoming, but instead made her stomach twist. She reached for her phone, no messages. Not even a good morning from Zoe, who used to send her TikToks at sunrise just a few months ago. She emerged from the cramped office bedroom quietly, half hoping someone would notice. They didn't. Mads was perched on the kitchen island, one leg swinging as she scrolled through her phone. Her voice was loud, too loud for the small space, as she narrated the group's plans for the day. "Brunch at Sandy's," she said, flipping her hair, then paddleboarding. "Maybe check out that little brewery Noah found." Emily waited for a pause. "Should I bring my ID for the brewery or—" "Oh," Mads cut in, not even looking up. "We didn't make a reservation for more than 6. They only let you book that many per table. Maybe next time?" The words weren't cruel, but they landed sharp. Zoe glanced at her briefly, then sipped her smoothie and looked away. Tyler said nothing. Emily nodded slowly, pretending she hadn't even cared. She sat at the far end of the table and poured herself some coffee, trying to stay calm. Maybe it was just poor planning. Maybe she was imagining the distance. Later, at brunch, they posted group selfies. Her phone stayed silent. She walked along the beach instead, tracing the shoreline with her bare feet, watching seagulls dive and scatter. It was peaceful. She liked that. The world, when quiet, didn't judge. Still, the loneliness clung to her like salt. In the afternoon, she came back to the house to find sand scattered across the floors, wet towels in piles, the air smelling like sun lotion and perfume. Her name had been scratched off the whiteboard chore list and replaced with Griffin's. No one mentioned it. Dinner was worse. They brought takeout, burgers and crab cakes, and forgot to get her order. "Oh, crap," Griffin muttered, unwrapping his second sandwich. "We thought you were eating out or something." "I wasn't." Tyler offered her half his fries. She shook her head. "No worries," she said. "Not that hungry." After they went to the fire pit, Emily stayed inside, curled up on the couch with a blanket. Through the glass doors, she could see them sitting in a circle, drinks in hand, laughing under the hanging string lights. Zoe was on Griffin's lap. Mads whispered something into Tyler's ear, her lips brushing his hair. Emily didn't flinch. She opened her journal instead, flipping to a blank page. Her pen moved slowly at first, then faster, as she wrote out everything she didn't want to say out loud. "They don't even see me anymore. I'm just a filler now, a loose string in the fabric of their lives." She paused, looked up at the sky through the skylight. The stars were starting to show. A single moth tapped against the glass. "I miss who I was when I believed I belonged." She closed the journal. It was getting easier to admit these things to herself, even if no one else cared, and maybe that meant something. She'd brought a camera with her, one of those vintage ones she'd found in a thrift shop, hoping to document the trip, capture memories, but it had stayed in her bag. Because what would she capture? Silence? Half smiles? That night in her tiny room, she pulled it out anyway, just to feel the weight of it in her hands. She looked in the mirror and took a photo of herself. No makeup, tired eyes, ocean air still lingering in her hair. It wasn't a happy photo, but it was real. Lying in bed, she remembered the first time she'd hung out with the group. They'd gone to a music festival, and she'd danced until her feet ached. Mads had pulled her into selfies, Zoe had braided her hair. Tyler had watched her like she was the only one there. Somewhere between then and now, the color had drained from those moments. Or maybe she'd just seen them too clearly now. Tomorrow, she told herself, tomorrow I won't wait to be invited. I'll make my own plan. It wasn't a declaration. Not yet. Just a whisper of strength. A beginning. The third day started with silence. The kind of silence that comes not from peace, but from exclusion. Emily woke to an empty house. No music, no voices, no smell of breakfast. Just the hum of the fridge and the ticking of the kitchen clock. She wandered through the rooms. The bedrooms were deserted. Shoes gone. Towels missing. The Jeep and sedan were gone from the driveway. They'd left without her. No note, no text. She checked her phone again, even though she already knew. The group chat was quiet. Her private messages were blank. Outside, the sun was already burning into the sand. A perfect beach day, the kind they'd planned for, but now it felt hollow. She stood by the window, watching the empty deck, The still chairs, the wide blue sky. Her chest was tight, but her eyes stayed dry. No more tears for people who didn't remember to say goodbye. Instead of waiting, she made her own plan. She packed a small bag, water, journal, a hoodie in case it got cold, and started walking. Past the dunes, past the crowded boardwalk, until she found the quieter edge of the island, a cove half hidden behind a ridge of rocks, where the waves crashed harder and the wind spoke louder. There, she sat. The ocean stretched out like forever. Salt stung the air, the breeze tangled her hair, and for a while it was enough. She wrote in her journal again. They left me. I don't know if they meant to, or if I've just become that easy to forget. She stared at the page. Let the words sink in. I don't think I matter to them anymore. A gull cried overhead. The wind picked up, and she looked up to see dark clouds forming along the horizon. A storm was rolling in, fast and moody. She didn't move. Let the sky change. Let the world shift. It felt honest. When the rain finally came, it was sudden and hard. She ducked into a crevice beneath the rocks, the salty spray soaking her sleeves. Thunder cracked in the distance. And still, she didn't cry. The storm passed quickly, like they always did here, and when the sun returned, she emerged from her shelter, soaked but steady. She made her way back, her feet caked with wet sand, her hair dripping. The house was still empty. She didn't bother texting anyone. Instead, she changed clothes, made herself tea, and sat on the porch wrapped in a towel, letting the last of the storm wind dry her skin. It was strange, how the isolation that had once felt cruel now felt clarifying. They'd left her, and she had survived. Even in that thunder, even when lightning lit up the sky and wind screamed through the cove, she'd been alone, and she'd been okay. Later, as the sun dipped low, she heard the cars pull in. Doors slammed. Laughter, the smell of fish tacos and cheap beer followed them up the porch. Zoe entered first, already mid-story, laughing about some bartender who'd flirted with her. Griffin was shouting about a jellyfish sting. Mads was flushed and radiant, like the storm had never happened. None of them asked where Emily had been. No apology. No realization. Just casual chaos, as if she were invisible again. Tyler passed her on the stairs and gave her a brief glance. Something flickered in his eyes. Guilt, maybe. But he didn't say a word. Emily nodded once. Said nothing. She didn't need to. Not anymore. Later, she watched from the upstairs landing as they gathered in the living room for a movie night. Popcorn bowls, blankets. Zoe curled up between Griffin and Mads, Tyler on the floor. Laughter echoing against the walls. Emily turned and went back to her tiny room. She closed the door, clicked the lock into place, and sat on the edge of her futon. She picked up the camera again. This time she didn't take a photo, she just held it. Not everything had to be captured. Some things needed to be felt, fully, quietly. She wasn't angry, not yet. But something inside her was shifting. A new kind of silence had taken root, not loneliness, but power. She was beginning to understand what it meant to be alone by choice, not by abandonment. She lay down without saying goodnight, and as she drifted to sleep, the thought came clear and steady. Next time they leave me out, I won't be waiting when they get back. By the fourth morning, Emily didn't bother checking the group chat. She already knew what it would say. Nothing. No invitations, no updates, just more silence from people who once claimed she was family. She made herself coffee, alone in the kitchen. The others had left their usual mess behind. Half-empty bottles, smeared plates, sunscreen on the counter. She didn't clean up this time. She sat at the dining table and listened. The house was quiet, too quiet. Then she noticed the absence, the distinct lack of shoes by the door, the missing backpacks, the silence from upstairs. The cars were gone again. This time she walked the entire house to be sure. Every room was empty. They'd left her again. No note, no message, not even a lazy excuse. She stared at the fridge. A crumpled receipt clung to the magnet. 2 paddleboard rentals, 4 sandwiches. 4, not 5. They hadn't forgotten her. They'd excluded her. Emily sat down slowly, pressing both palms against the table. She wasn't surprised, not really, but something inside her broke loose, the kind of break that doesn't sound like glass or shouting, but silence, heavy and irreversible. She got up and walked to the hallway closet. At the back, on a hook, hung a set of keys labeled Master. Below it, a printed tag. "One copy only. Please return at checkout." She stared at the keys for a full minute, then took them. With each step, something settled inside her, clearer, calmer, like silt sinking in still water. She went through every room. She locked the bedroom doors first. Hers last. She locked the back entrance, the deck doors, the side gate, the front door too, but left it so it would only open with the key. She moved through the house like she belonged there. Like she was claiming something they never offered her: space, dignity, peace. When she finished, she sat on the couch and listened to the empty house. It didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt like hers. She made lunch, grilled cheese and soup, played music from her phone. Not their music, hers, a playlist full of songs they used to mock. And she danced, slowly, by herself, because she could. Later, she stretched out on the living room rug, staring at the ceiling fan spinning lazily above her. They had taken everything from her: her sense of belonging, her spot in the group. Even Tyler, who once swore he saw her better than anyone else. But they hadn't taken her will. That was still hers. Evening came before she noticed. The sound of tires on gravel snapped her back. Then voices. Laughter, doors slamming. She didn't move. She sat on the couch, calm as they came up the steps. A pause. Then the sound of the front handle jiggling. Then again, louder, then pounding. "What the hell?" Griffin's voice irritated. "Did someone lock it?" Mads. Sharper. They knocked. Called her name. Emily didn't answer. She walked to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water, and took a sip. "Emily?" Tyler now. "Are you in there?" She walked back to the living room, looked at the door, then turned away. Her phone buzzed. A message from Zoe. "You good?" She didn't reply. They knocked again. Mads sounded pissed now. "This isn't funny." Emily smiled faintly. It wasn't meant to be. She walked upstairs and sat by the window, peeking through the blinds. They looked so small from here. All that noise, all that drama, reduced to silhouettes against the fading light. Tyler paced. Zoe argued with Griffin. Mads pulled out her phone, probably texting the landlord. But the rules were clear. Master key held by one guest. No spares. And now that person was Emily. She stayed quiet. That night, as the group huddled outside in rising frustration, she lit a candle, pulled on a sweatshirt and curled up with her journal. She didn't write much. Just one line. "If I don't matter to them, why should they matter to me?" She went to bed early, slept soundly, and when she woke the next day to see them still outside, tired, sweaty, annoyed, she didn't feel guilt, only relief. They'd finally given her the freedom they tried so hard to take, and she wasn't giving it back. The morning sun bathed the beach house in gold. Emily stretched her arms above her head, feeling the warmth through the windows, the kind of calm that once seemed impossible under the weight of their presence. Now the house was quiet, peaceful, entirely hers. She took her time making breakfast: scrambled eggs with chives, toast with butter, fresh grapefruit. For once, she didn't have to fight for counter space or settle for leftovers. She didn't have to explain herself or adjust to someone else's mood. Every corner of the house belonged to her now. After eating, she pulled on a swimsuit and walked barefoot to the beach. The sand welcomed her like an old friend. Waves rolled in and out with a rhythm that matched her breath. No shouting, no forced games, no music she didn't like. She dove into the surf and let the salt sting her eyes, her skin, her soul. When she surfaced, she laughed. Not because something was funny, but because the release felt so good. She swam farther out than she ever had before. Let the current tug at her. Let it remind her she was small but still standing, still strong. When she returned to shore, she lay in the sand, arms spread, eyes closed. The sun kissed her face. Her breathing slowed. The world was wide and open. Back at the house, she changed into soft clothes and opened all the windows. The ocean breeze swept through every room. She blasted her own playlist, songs filled with soul, with softness, with lyrics that understood her. She danced through the hallways, not for anyone, not to be seen, just because she could. She found an old book in the living room, left by a past guest maybe, and read for hours in the hammock out back, tea in hand, legs swinging lazily in the wind. The book was good, but the solitude was better. Sometime in the afternoon, she heard voices. They were back. She didn't move. The key was in her pocket. The lock still clicked. The house was still hers. She waited. Then the knocking began again. "Emily, seriously, this is messed up," Griffin shouted. "We're sweating our asses off out here." She turned a page in her book. "I'm not playing anymore." Mads's voice rose. "You made your little point. Let us in." No reply, only the wind. "Em?" Tyler's voice now, quieter. "Can we talk?" She closed the book, marked her place, stood up slowly and walked to the kitchen. She poured a glass of lemonade, added ice, took a long sip. Outside, the knocking continued, softer now, sporadic. They were beginning to realize. She walked to the living room, sat on the couch, and pulled out her phone. Dozens of unread messages, missed calls. The group chat now had frantic updates. Zoe saying she was freaking out. Mads accusing her of being cruel. Griffin asking who had the spare. Tyler's name appeared most. She read them all without responding. When evening came, the sky turned lavender and rose. She stepped out onto the balcony and looked down at them. Zoe was curled in a towel on a lawn chair. Mads sat cross-legged by the front door, her makeup smudged. Griffin paced, muttering. Tyler leaned against the jeep, his eyes on the ground. They looked tired, like people unraveling. She felt no malice, only clarity. She had never been the problem. She'd been the glue they ignored until it dissolved. Later that night, as they huddled outside under blankets, Emily turned off the lights in the house one by one, not out of pettiness, but because the day was ending and she was ready to rest. She locked her bedroom door, not out of fear, but habit. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan. For the first time, she felt something close to peace. Outside, they were learning. Inside, she was healing. This wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. By the 6th day, the tension outside had fermented into something louder, uglier. Emily sat by the upstairs window with a cup of coffee in hand, watching the group below. Their frustration had shifted into desperation. It started with shouting. "This is insane!" Mads banged on the front door hard enough to rattle it. "Emily, open the damn door!" "What is your problem?" Emily remained quiet, calm, focused. She sipped her coffee, heart steady. "I swear," Mads went on, "you're being so immature. You locked us out over what? Some petty drama? Grow up." The words had lost their sting. Down below, Griffin kicked the deck railing. "She's lost it, man. She's seriously lost it." Zoe leaned her head back against the siding and muttered something none of them acknowledged. Then Tyler stepped forward. "Em," he said, voice softer than the others. "Can we just talk? Please?" Emily stood and opened the upstairs window just a crack. Not enough to be seen, just enough to hear better. He went on, "You've made your point, okay? You're angry. I get it. But this isn't you." She almost laughed, because that was the problem, wasn't it? This was her, the version of her they refused to see. Mads turned to Tyler, voice sharp. "Don't beg. She wants us groveling." "No," he said. "I think she just wants to be heard." Emily stepped away from the window. She walked down the stairs slowly and stopped at the front door. She didn't open it. Just leaned close, her voice steady but firm. "You left me," she said through the wood. "More than once." A pause. Tyler again. "We didn't mean to." She shook her head, even though he couldn't see it. "You did." Zoe spoke up then, hesitant. "Emily, we were just caught up. We thought you needed space. I needed respect." No one responded. Outside, the silence grew heavy. Maz finally spoke, her voice full of venom. "You think this is noble, playing gatekeeper? You're not some hero, Emily. You're petty, you're insecure. And this is sad." Emily leaned her forehead briefly against the door, not in defeat, but in finality. "You don't get to decide who I am anymore," she replied. "Not after how you treated me, not after how easily you erased me." Another pause. Footsteps backed away. Emily didn't move. Then Tyler's voice again, closer now, just him. "You're right," he said. "I didn't fight for you. I let them treat you like a backup plan, like an afterthought. I didn't stand up for you." She stayed silent, heart tight. "I'm sorry," he said. This time she let the words land. Let them sit there without softening. Then she answered, clear and low, "Too late." He exhaled. "I know." She heard him walk away. That night, she didn't sleep much. She lay on the couch instead, watching shadows move across the ceiling as the fan spun above her. For the first time, she wasn't just angry or hurt. She felt whole. There was pain, yes, but beneath it, something deeper had settled. A calm rooted in knowing she wasn't crazy, she wasn't dramatic. She'd just finally had enough. They could label her however they wanted. But she had drawn a line, and that was power. By the seventh morning, the air around the house had shifted. The knocking had stopped, so had the yelling. What replaced it was the quiet hum of defeat. Emily stepped onto the balcony with her tea and looked down. They were still there, sunburned, disheveled, and clearly exhausted. Zoe had wrapped herself in a beach towel like a cocoon. Griffin sat under a makeshift umbrella, muttering to himself. Mads was pacing with her phone, snapping at the air, likely trying to reach someone, anyone, to fix this. Tyler, however, just sat on the cooler, arms resting on his knees, eyes distant. She didn't feel pity. She felt confirmation. Later that afternoon, she watched as they tried to organize themselves. Zoe argued with Mads over food. Griffin wanted to leave. Tyler said nothing. Every word exchanged carried a new weight. A weight they were no longer used to bearing, not without her keeping things light, smoothed over, soothed. Mads snapped at Zoe about being too dramatic. Zoe rolled her eyes and muttered, "Coming from you." Emily closed the curtain with a small smile. They were unraveling without her. By mid-afternoon, someone knocked again, softer this time. Noah. She hadn't seen him in days. His voice came gently through the door. "I wasn't part of this, Emily. I stayed at my brother's place." "Just got back." She said nothing. "I don't blame you," he continued. "Honestly, it's overdue." That made her blink. "You were the glue, you know," he added. "They just never realized it." Then he left. She stood by the door a long while after, heart steady. That night she walked the upper hall slowly, checking each lock. The house was hers, her rules, her pace. Down below they were restless, hungry, uncomfortable, and for once completely out of control. From the window she saw Mads throwing her phone onto the sand, shouting at Griffin, who stormed off toward the dunes. Zoe followed him. Tyler stood up and walked away from the fire pit, toward the edge of the shore alone. Noah was gone. He'd said his piece. It was only a matter of time now. Emily sat on the couch and pulled out her camera. She took a photo of the empty living room. A quiet, soft light spilled through the windows. No one else's mess. No noise. Just stillness. The kind of stillness that comes when you no longer need to explain yourself. In her journal, she wrote, "When they say I've changed, what they really mean is they can't use me anymore." Outside, the voices were rising again. Mads and Zoe were fighting, loud, shrill, overlapping. Then came a crash, Griffin shouting, silence. Then Mads crying. Emily didn't move. She made tea, sat with her back to the wall, let the sounds roll over her like ocean waves. They'd mistaken her silence for weakness. Now they were learning it was survival. When she finally stepped outside, it was only to water the succulents near the side of the house. She didn't look at them, didn't speak. Just let her presence register like thunder on a cloudless day. Zoe looked up, eyes tired. She didn't say anything. Mads turned her face away. Tyler watched her quietly. She walked back in without a word, not out of cruelty, out of choice. She had nothing left to prove. The next morning, only Tyler and Zoe remained. Griffin was gone, Mads too. Maybe they'd gone into town. Maybe they'd left. Emily didn't ask. She sat with her coffee, watching the waves. The tide pulled in and back out again. Constant, powerful, indifferent. She was learning to be like that. She was learning to exist without apology. That evening, the light began to shift. The sun dipped lower than usual, casting long shadows across the sand. Emily stood by the upstairs window, sipping chamomile tea, watching the tide crawl up the beach in slow, determined lines. There was a knock. Not at the front this time, but at the side door. She didn't move. Then came his voice, soft and close. "Emily, please, it's just me." She waited. The silence between them stretched like taut wire. "I know I don't deserve your time," Tyler said, "but I need to say this somewhere you can actually hear me." Still, she said nothing. "I was a coward, not just lately, through the whole thing. I let them turn you into an outsider. I watched it happen and I stayed quiet because it was easier. Because I didn't want to be the one who made things messy." Emily leaned against the wall, eyes closed. She wasn't surprised. But hearing it said out loud still cracked something open. "I should have protected you," he continued, "and not just because we were together, because you deserved better from all of us, especially me." There was a pause. Then the sound of him sliding down the door until he was sitting against it. "I loved you," he said quietly. "I still might. But I ruined it. I know that." Emily looked at the door. She didn't want this to be a performance. She didn't want pity or last-minute realization spoken through a keyhole. But this was something different. Honest, maybe. "I see you now," he said. "Too late, but clearly. You were the only one holding us together. You always noticed who needed help, who felt left out. You were the one who kept peace when Mads stirred chaos. You didn't just show up. You carried us." Another pause. "I never thanked you for that." She stepped closer, still not opening the door, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "Why didn't you stop them?" Tyler exhaled. "Because I was weak. Because Mads made it easy to believe I was better off without drama. And because I didn't want to lose my place in the group." "So you let me lose mine," she replied. "Yes." The truth hung heavy between them. She sat on the floor, her back against the same door, only inches away from him. "I thought you were different," she whispered. "I wanted to be," he said. Neither of them spoke for a long while. Then he asked, "Is there anything I can do?" She didn't answer right away. Then, finally, "You can leave. But before you go..." She reached to the side, grabbed a bottle of water, and slid it through the crack in the window just above the porch bench. "For the road," she said. He took it without speaking. She stood up and returned to the kitchen, refilled her tea. When she looked back, he was still sitting there, holding the bottle like it meant something more than it did. "I don't hate you," she said suddenly. He looked up. "I just don't want you in my world anymore." His eyes dropped to the ground. He nodded slowly. "That's fair." She didn't wait for him to leave. She returned to the living room, turned on the record player, an old soul album she found buried in the cabinet, and let the music drift through the house. When she walked upstairs again, he was gone. All that remained on the porch was the bottle, unopened. She left it there. She knew now that some doors shouldn't be reopened no matter who's knocking. The storm announced itself in low rumbles that vibrated through the floorboards. Emily stood by the open window, watching clouds churn above the sea, thick and grey, swallowing the last light of day. Wind tugged at the curtains, salty and sharp. The air felt heavy, like the world was holding its breath. She closed the window gently and moved through the house, securing latches, drawing blinds. The power flickered once, then steadied. Somewhere in the distance, thunder cracked loud enough to make her jump. Outside, the group was scrambling. Only Zoe and Tyler remained. The others were gone. She didn't know where. She didn't care. Zoe was pulling tarps over their bags. Tyler yelled something she couldn't hear, pointing toward the sky. A flash of lightning turned the sand silver. Then rain began, fast and wild, slashing sideways in sheets. They rushed to the cars, huddling inside. Wipers flicked back and forth, useless against the storm's fury. Emily watched it all from the upstairs landing, arms crossed. She remembered her first night alone, the same kind of storm. The fear, the wet cold, the way the thunder had felt like a warning. Now it felt different. The storm was just weather, and she had survived worse. She turned off the hallway light and sat on the steps. Let the house be still. Another crash of thunder made the windows tremble. She saw Tyler jump in the driver's seat, talking with his hands. Zoe buried her face in a blanket, shivering. Emily exhaled. This wasn't about revenge, it never was. It was about being seen. About choosing herself when no one else would. And yet, watching them huddled and soaked and afraid stirred something deep in her chest. Not guilt, never guilt, but memory. Of how it felt to be forgotten, of how long it had taken her to stop waiting. The front door creaked as she approached it. The key sat heavy in her palm. She stared at the lock for a long moment, then slowly turned it. Rain pounded the porch roof. Lightning cracked again. She stepped outside. They saw her immediately. Tyler opened the door of the Jeep, hesitating. Emily raised her voice above the storm. "Get inside." Zoe didn't wait. She bolted toward the porch, soaked within seconds. Tyler followed, slower. They stood in the foyer, dripping, shivering, eyes wide. Emily handed Zoe a towel without speaking. Zoe took it gratefully. Tyler looked at her, waiting. "I'm not mad," Emily said simply, "but I'm done." He nodded once, didn't argue. "Where's Mads?" she asked. "Gone," Zoe said. "Griffin, too. Took the other car into town." Emily nodded. "They're not coming back tonight?" Zoe shrugged. "Didn't say." Emily gestured toward the stairs. "There are dry blankets in the hallway closet." They didn't thank her. She didn't need them to. She stood in the entryway alone after they disappeared upstairs, her breath steady, her skin damp from the rain. The house no longer felt like a battleground. It was simply hers. Later, she sat on the couch with a new journal page in front of her. Even mercy can be power. She underlined it, twice. The storm passed with the sunrise. Quiet returned, the kind that follows something fierce, like the hush of an apology too late to matter. The sky above the beach house was washed clean, soft blue with streaks of gold. Everything looked calmer. Even the sand seemed smoothed over, like it had no memory of the chaos that came before. Emily stood at the kitchen counter, pouring the last of the coffee into a to-go mug. Her suitcase was zipped, her journal tucked safely inside. Upstairs, the house still held the shallow breathing of two people asleep. She hadn't spoken to them again after letting them in. There hadn't been a need. Tyler and Zoe had stayed in separate rooms. No drama, no questions, just silence. She'd offered warmth, not reconciliation, shelter, not trust, and that was enough. She walked through the house one last time, past the photos they'd taken on day one, the shell wind chime in the hallway, the faded welcome mat that had once greeted all of them like equals. None of it meant what it used to. At the front door, she paused, took the master key from her pocket, and placed it gently on the table by the entry. Beside it, a folded piece of paper with two simple words: "Thanks for the lesson." She didn't knock on any doors, didn't say goodbye. Some endings don't need words. The gravel crunched under her sandals as she stepped outside, suitcase wheels carving tracks toward her parked rideshare. The driver gave her a nod but didn't speak. She was grateful. She looked once, just once, over her shoulder. The house stood quiet, tall and white in the morning light. It wasn't hers anymore. It never really had been. But what she took from it couldn't be locked away. Freedom, voice, self. The road stretched out ahead, winding along the dunes and cliffs. As the car pulled away, Emily rolled the window down. Let the breeze hit her full in the face. It carried salt but also promise. Back at home, her inbox was full of emails, college reminders, a few missed calls, one from her mom asking how the trip had gone. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she unpacked, made tea, and opened her laptop. A travel website blinked in front of her. Solo backpacking tours, open spots available. She clicked on one. Europe. No friends, no drama, just freedom. A week ago, she would have hesitated. Now she booked it without blinking. That night, she wrote in her journal again. They didn't break me. They revealed me. She underlined it. The phone buzzed, a new message from Zoe. No hard feelings, right? Emily stared at it for a moment, then deleted it. Not out of anger, out of peace. Some people weren't meant to be carried forward. Some chapters were meant to close, clean, sharp, and final. Outside, the wind rattled the window pane gently. She smiled. She was alone. And for the first time, that wasn't something to fix, it was something to celebrate. If you followed this journey all the way through, thank you. Stories like Emily's remind us that being left behind can sometimes be the exact path we needed to walk alone. Don't forget to subscribe if you felt something stir within you. There's so much more ahead. And now, click the next video on your screen for another unforgettable story of strength, transformation, and the freedom that comes when you choose yourself.